Hello and welcome to the Fire Officer Project podcast, a show where we will discuss and learn together about topics specific to the American Fire Service. Come along as we explore areas such as firehouse traditions and culture, the fire family life, leadership, as well as getting yourself ready to be the company officer. This show is for everyone from the rookie firefighter to newly promoted officers. I'm your host, Mark McCurdy. Now let's get on with the show. Hello, welcome to episode 14 of the Fire Officer Project. It's 2023. Crazy. So happy New Year. It's a couple weeks into the first few weeks of January. Finally pushing record. I tried this yesterday and I just wasn't feeling it. I got all set up and it just having one of those days where you're like, you know what? If I push record and just push through it, I can get it done and set it out there, but that's not what I want to do. It's already raw enough as it is. To me, to kind of half-ass that would suck. So decided, you know what, let's start today. Just got back from lunch with the wife, got my afternoon cup of coffee. I'm like, okay, now's a better day to finally push record and get this out there. So what are we going to talk about this episode? Episode 14, I titled it, Let's Talk Fire. You try to come up with these cool little titles of things. I don't know. I figured if we talk about that for once, somebody might actually go, oh, let's talk about that, because for the most part, this whole program isn't necessarily about tactics. I've already kind of shied away from it, and I'll explain why, but we're going to talk a little bit about it now today, but I'm going to explain it a little bit here. So finally getting this out, and I got another one, the next episode, just so you're here now, so you don't have to wait till the end. Episode 15, I'm going to talk about, open it up a little bit more to not just being a company officer, but I'm going to talk about probation and probationary periods. First getting hired and but being on probation as a firefighter, and then through the ranks, kind of talk about that aspect of the fire service. I'm not really going to talk about testing and all that because things have changed, and we'll talk about that in 15. But so that one's going to be about probationary statuses and probationary time and how to do your best in those positions. But this episode, we're going to talk about fire, and what I mean is, let me go over the points here, what we're going to talk about. So I'm not really going to talk about tactics, because if we did that, how much hate, and it'd be like 50-50 no matter what I said about smoothbore versus fogged versus certain hose versus this rig versus, you guys see it enough. Jeez. You guys see it enough on social media, how people just hammer each other, keyboard warriors about, I would have done this better off a 10-second clip that they're looking at. So I don't want to get involved with that crap. I'm going to give you my opinion on real life things, but I'm not going to talk about straight up tactics, resetting the fire, and we fight fire from the inside and out, and those other pussies go from the outside in, whatever. I'm not doing that because that's not this show. But I'm going to talk about how to get ready and actually performing on the Fireground, what it's like to think as a company officer. And some of those things I've already kind of talked about in previous episodes, but this one I'm going to focus in a little bit more. Talk about some good habits, which some of these topics, so after I wrote it out and corrected everything that I wanted to write, and I'm looking at my paperwork notes here, I've already mentioned some of these things. And then you realize that repetition is what's going to help you learn, right? So I don't have to go see episode whatever to hear what I talked about then. I kind of repeat myself a little bit, but I might say something different this time, or I might pick up a different nugget. So, and it's kind of the same, right? Our freaking day at the firehouses are kind of the same. The thing that really changes is whatever training we have going on and calls. Otherwise, everything else is kind of the same. So, kind of similar. So, talk about good habits, learning curve, busy versus a slower department, or busy versus slower stations, and how both can be beneficial. Little SOP, SOG review. I know I've hit that hard in expectations episode and stuff, but for those who haven't listened, I'll just touch on it a little bit of where it ties into your actual day. We're not going to spend a whole bunch of time on it. Discipline on the Fireground, and your mentality and how you think and how you react to certain things. Who doesn't love good stories? I get a couple stories that I'll throw in there. Just kind of where these things tie in, and some previous history. And then we have another question from the streets that I went back and I had to look. I'm like, I can't listen to all the episodes. I can't remember if I've already talked about this question, but I think I did. But I'm going to bring it up again because it has to do with tactics. So I'll bring it up. And if you haven't listened to it, then cool, to be new. And if you've already heard it, you can shut it off at the end back there. So those are the topics that we're going to talk about. And so a little bit of an update. Like I said, 2023, it's amazing. I can't believe it already. So second week into January, kids are back to school, sports are starting up. It was a nice break. Really, do you take a break from work? Not usually. None of us really do, but the mode of your family or whatever you might be in is in break mode, right? Like it's not as the regimented time throughout the year, which is cool because I like the Christmas holiday time. It's just cool to do all those little extra things that you do throughout the year. That you don't do throughout the year, I should say. And that it's just fun to be around. And it's just a good season. But now you kind of hit that reset button. It's a new year. I don't know about the whole resolution and all that thing. I mean, I'm going to be 48 soon. So you kind of realize that you set yourself up and then you crap on it anyway in a couple of weeks. So you do what you do and that's what you get. So make it work. I'm not going to tell you this year, let's do this. Let's try this. You know what? It's just another day on the calendar. The clock doesn't stop ticking. So we just do what we do, right? Have had a lot of good conversations. First off, I want to say thank you to everybody who listens, who passes on all this information and maybe is sharing it with other friends. And yeah, they might think it sucks or whatever. And I'm just trying to really get it started. After doing this now for a year and a half, I only have this will be episode 14. That's just a pace of what I'm at because there's a lot, right? And you're trying to realize, you try to give a little bit to it each day. And then you're getting pulled in so many directions. You realize why it takes companies years to get started. Not that this is a company, but an idea. And then once you get it rolling, it kind of starts steamrolling. In the last few weeks, month or so, it's actually really started steamrolling. I watch my numbers of download numbers just shoot up suddenly. I think it also has to do with because I try to have more of a regimen of posting and putting myself out there a little. But most of it, if not all of it, is coming from you guys. Passing it on, word of mouth, sharing it. So thank you very much. I've actually had FaceTime conversations on the phone, text messages back and forth with people that I never would have been connected with if it wasn't for just doing this platform. And it's awesome. It's cool to hear because you hear other people's ideas, their opinions and things, and you just get to bounce back and forth on things. And sometimes it's almost therapy because, right, you go see a therapist or you need to go talk to somebody. You don't really know that person. And it's almost like we're helping each other out, just venting on things or opinions, and it's cool just to be heard. So it's awesome how much that you guys are giving back to me. I get more out of it than probably you get out of listening to me. So it's been awesome. So thanks for that interaction. Let's keep that going. That's where it's going to play in big in the future. Now that I have all the stuff that I can do phone interviews with, and I'm going to try to do some in-person interviews depending on people that are local. It's all going to take off soon. It's just a slow process uphill, and you just got to keep that constant, steady pressure of trying to get it done. What else do I got here? That class, I know I've talked about it so many times. You guys are like, we've heard you're going to do interviews forever, and you haven't done it yet. Believe me, I'm trying. It's this slow, constant process of just trying to work, do this, stay engaged with the family, which matters the most, right? And put in some time here where I don't feel like I'm pulling out from my family and missing out. But there's times where you just have to make things happen. You start thinking down the road, like, what am I going to do when I retire? Do I want to do something like this? Do I want to take something in a whole nother direction? Whatever it may be. Not that, this is going to be a huge moneymaker or something, but it's just something fun to do. So you just get pulled in a lot of directions like all of us, and you just try to make it work. So I'm still working on the hands-on class. That I need to really start happening. I already have multiple programs that if somebody said, hey, could you put on a class? Sure. Do you need it to be 2 hours, 4 hours, 2 days, whatever? I can massage it and adjust the program. But now I'm trying to condense this down into about a 6-hour program that's worth people's time coming to a physical class. And that I thought was going to be easy because I already have the material. But when you really start focusing on it, like I started taking classes on presenting better, speaking better, how to tell stories better. There's a lot to it. So that takes time too. Not only can I not just dedicate myself to the material, but trying to just put out a better product is a whole nother thing. So that's a lot of what's working on too. So it's all good stuff. Geez, I had to pause there for a second. Sushi burps. That's like the lunch date with the wife, right? Sushi on whatever day she has off and I have off, and it's nice. But damn, it's starting to catch up to me today. Okay, so before we get started on all this material, I was listening to something. You guys have already heard this before, but you ever noticed when people ask what you do, or they kind of know what you do, and you're in a conversation, and then one of two things usually sometimes comes about, right? Oh, yeah, I always wanted to be a firefighter, right? We've all heard that from somebody you're having a conversation with, and you're like, oh, it'd be so great. And you're like, okay, you kind of explain to them and you listen to their story. But one that cracks me up the most every time, because you know it's coming, is usually when somebody says something like, oh, do you know so-and-so? Do you know Steve? He's a firefighter too. He's my neighbor, whatever it may be. And you're like, no, what's his last name? Oh, yeah, I don't know, but he's a fireman in LA or whatever. And you're like, okay. And you're trying to be cordial and nice about it, but these people are like, yeah, do you know him? Don't you guys know each other? It's like, yes and no. Like, there's small world things that happen, but for the most part, maybe I just don't have that many friends. But yeah, half the time I'm like, yeah, I don't know that person. And they don't even know who they're talking about or where the person works, or it just cracks me up when you hear that story, because you know it's coming, right? You've seen this and you've heard it, and you're like, oh, here it comes. So you're going to ask me something. They only know a first name. They don't know where the person works, and you're supposed to like, yeah, sure, totally. I totally know that person. It just cracks me up. It's just funny. So instead of always being so like, trying to give you all the rules of how to be better and blowing smoke up your tail because I think I'm more important than I am, it was just funny to think of these stories that you deal with as a firefighter. Because it's usually, do you know so-and-so? What's the worst call you've ever been on? And jam, you guys know how to party, right? Isn't that kind of like the biggest kind of fireman innuendos or whatever the hell that is? It just cracks me up. So anyways, I just thought I'd throw that in there. So anyways, let's get started. It's like 12 minutes in and you're like, dude, who cares? Fast forward. Just get to the meat and potatoes. I got a limited time here. So we're talking, not necessarily talking about tactics or a little bit, but let's just say, how do you get ready for things and good habits? And a couple of things have happened recently at work where I realized, like, holy crap, I'm going to be 48. I got hired in 2000, so coming up 22, 23 years, and you still got a decent amount of time, right? I have a decent amount of time left. Yes and no, but I started hearing more, right? Around this time in the spring, we start hearing who's going to retire and who's putting in paperwork, and you're like, oh my God, that person's leaving, and now you're just 1 year closer to walking out that door yourself. And it started making me think about the old timers. You know, people say, oh, the old timers. Well, we had a lot of probationary firefighters in my station, and in our department, it's pretty young in certain areas in rank, and that's just the way it is now. We've been hiring consistently for 8 years, maybe. I can't, I'm just guessing, but that's pretty darn close. Multiple classes for that many years. It's just boom, boom. The machine keeps rolling. And you may deal with something similar depending on the size of your department, but you ever notice the old timers? Where you're like, the old timers, like, you didn't screw around. Remember when you worked with so-and-so and they didn't screw around and you were on your game? Well, that kind of cracks me up because I started thinking about, well, what was it about that person? That you didn't screw around with so-and-so, but with so-and-so you can? So that's my dilemma, my little thing I speak about. Captain Good Times, that just wants to be your buddy and wants to be the captain because they want to ride up front and wear the bugles and make the decisions on certain things, but they still want to act like a firefighter and be your friend, but not be the supervisor. One side, not good. And then you had the old timers where people are like, you didn't screw around with that guy. Okay. Well, why didn't you? Because that person had expectations. Now, do you have to wait until you're the old timer, or I don't know. We don't even have an age requirement on ours, so our guys could look old and maybe have 5 years on the job. You got old timers, meaning the legit ones that have close to 30 years or 25 years on and look old. Okay, you know what I'm saying? Like the people that actually can back up what they're doing. But why is it that people wouldn't screw with them or had that expectation or knew how to act around them? I'm going to say it's because those people had expectations and they had standards. If they were just a dick, which, excuse me, some of this language might come out today. It depends on, I never know when this coffee kicks in or how I start getting. It's harder because I'm just talking in a microphone, but when I'm teaching a class, it's easier to bounce back and forth. But all I'm saying is if I slip up a little bit on the language, I'll let you know. Those people, the old timers that were dicks, were just that. You're like, well, that guy's just a jerk. I don't really respect him. But how about the dudes, and think about it because you've worked around them, or you know who they are, or maybe you had an experience with them in a class. They taught in your academy. They're retired now, or it's somehow you're associated with some department that you see that person. You know who I'm talking about. Picture that person in your mind. That's the person. They're not a dick or a jerk. They just had expectations, and they could back it up based on experience and time. Is that a rarity anymore? They're still there. But you have one of two ways. The hard charger that goes all the way through their career and is known like you don't screw around when you're around that person because they had expectations and they expected a certain amount of work out of you and a certain level of intensity or whatever it may be. Or you had the extreme opposite, which is the guy who's checked out, probably should already retire, but for some reason is just hanging on, whether it's time on, left, or doesn't know what to do, or doesn't want to just pull the plug and sits in their ass all day in the office or in their dorm and really doesn't do crap. That sucks. You know, I don't want to be that person. The day I start doing that, it's a time to put me out to pasture because that goes against everything that I think we should be doing. And yeah, the older you get, the more you slow down a little bit, and it's maybe harder to engage, but not really. It's really not an excuse. There's definitely times where I'm like, ugh, I don't feel like it. But we all get that until we get out there, right? Until you get out there and you start training and doing everything, and then everybody's like, oh, man, that was good. We need to do this more often. And then the guys motivate you as well, too. So anyways, I'm just thinking about those old timers and what expectations they had. And even to now, I mean, I think I have expectations because I tell people I do, whether they talk shit under their breath about me when I leave the room. Okay, that's fine. But I also think my reaction or yours to how you do things, some of these young people that are new on the job might not realize what you're trying to tell them until years down the road when they remember you and go, oh, now I get it, when the light bulb clicks. So those are kind of the things. Some of these things I say could be an immediate thing that gets fixed, and then some people just have to experience for themselves. It's the same way with the information that you pass on. Stuff that you pass on to people, it may take a while before it clicks. So the person you're mentoring or the people that you're being mentored by, you're not completely understanding what they're saying. But anyways, the thing I was noticing is like sometimes I sit in my dorm at night and thinking like, God, was I a dick to this person because I said this or did that? And I try not to be. I try to be even keel as it is. So much so that I had a conversation recently with a captain and was like, geez, man, I'm surprised you haven't said much about so-and-so because usually it doesn't take you that long to react or say something to somebody when they're screwing up. Just like I would expect somebody to say something to me right away if I was screwing up, which happens a lot. So that you just have to have that give and take relationship of telling the truth to people. But I guess it gets me more tight, just like it probably does you, when you look at something and go, hey, you do realize this job can kill you, right? You know, how can you hear it all the time. How can you train enough for a job that can kill you? Well, I get sick and tired, and I'm sure you see it too, of we get lucky a lot of times. A lot of times we get lucky and go, damn, why did that not just happen right there? And sometimes we get caught, right? There's still a lot of people that get hurt and killed on this job every year. So I start thinking, okay, am I being a jerk or not? Well, sometimes it really can be frustrating, and I'm assuming it's happening all over the place, but sometimes you can get caught up in the fact of you look at it and go, are we just hiring people because we want it to look a certain way and just be all warm and fuzzy? Like this is Sesame Street Fire Department or something, like everything's great. Everything's wonderful. You don't need to know your job. You can just barely know the basics and give a crappy drill and then not go on many calls. And then we think, oh, that person's great. They're a great probationary person because they did this. They clean the toilets really well. I've already told this in other episodes where I joke about how I get sick of the boots cleaning my toilet because I don't care about that. Nobody cleans my toilet here at home. You know, our family, whatever, we take care of it. We have our chores, we do, but I want these people to know their job. I'd rather you be out there and just have the doors open on the rig and just staring at crap and pulling it out than cleaning my toilet twice a day or once a day. And yeah, that needs to get done. You can't let that crap fall apart either. But there's so much time that gets spent just cleaning, just to make stuff look like you're doing something the right way versus not really knowing it when you're on the Fireground. So the firemanship craft of it, you got to really push that. So that's kind of what I'm talking about in this episode is kind of the craftsmanship of the fire department and just staying in that. But man, do we deal with a lot right now of just people promoting as fast as they can, just trying to do everything they can to climb up the ladder, but really don't have that solid base. And honestly, they just don't. You can't. If you don't have a certain amount of time on the job, you can't. Sorry. You don't like it? Turn the shit off then. Because if you don't have enough time or experience seeing what stuff that's going to kill you, and then you're going to be the boss and then tell people what to do when you don't even have a house of cards, you're standing on a house of cards, okay, you better hope you're pretty lucky then. That's the truth. Sorry. You don't like it? Like I said, turn it off. If you're that person that's just skyrocketing to the top, cool. But you better own it. And when you get pushback, when you make a shitty decision on people that have been around for a little bit, okay, now, do I think that you should balk or push back on somebody who has rank over you? No, because you've all seen that, right? Respect the position. Don't necessarily mean you're going to respect the person, but you're also not going to just not do what they say because you don't like it within reason. Okay, I'm not necessarily talking about stuff like that, but you're going to get put in those scenarios where you're like, are you freaking kidding me right now? This person has how much time on the job? And I hate it, right? Because everybody like always goes, what's your seniority number? How much time do you have on the job? Well, that doesn't correlate so well like on our department. Because some people, they come through the academy, they get a new number for the county, and they work some other department for 5, 10, 15 years. You don't know, right? Unless you ask. But it's usually apparent who those people are. So you kind of have to take that with a grain of salt. Like, okay, I get it. Somebody worked 5 years at another department, 10 years in another department. Yeah, they're going to promote a little bit faster in their current department because they have done it somewhere else. So that's not a blanket statement to say, oh, if your seniority number's this and you only have this amount of time on. I'll be open enough to say complete time on. You got to look at an individual basis. And I hesitate to say anything when it looked just at a seniority number, just on the current department I work at now. Because until I see that person and see how that person acts and really get their background before I say anything or understand where they're coming from. But I know there's other spots where you're going, Jesus, you can watch people and go, there's just zero experience there stacked on other people, and that's dangerous. But it's not controllable. It's not necessarily, you can't really control it. Because they also have to learn by time on the job. So where do you draw that line? So anyways, I don't know, I'm kind of rambling a bit, but I was just thinking about how those people, the old timers, you wouldn't screw around with that person. Okay, well, who do you want to be? You want to be Captain Good Times? Do you want to be the old crusty old timer that you're like scared of? Or do you want to be somewhere in the middle or lean to one side or the other? You choose. You take what works for you and how things will come across and what you want to accomplish and what you have going on in life and what you want to be. So, but if you're that person that's shooting up the ranks, you really don't have that experience, but you're just trying to get to a certain level, okay, that's fine. Somebody's got to do that job. It's like people are always like, oh, are you taking the BC test? No, not right now. It's not necessarily for me. I don't know that I ever will. I know my limitations, right? And then you look at other things and people are just skyrocketing up and okay, that's fine. I'm more talking about boots on the ground type things. You won't hear me talk about 40-hour stuff because that's just not my wheelhouse right now. Not necessarily for me, and that's not really what I'm here to talk about. But I am talking about good habits and actual boots on the ground craftsmanship of this job. So you've heard me say it in other episodes, good habits. First thing as you come into your station, whether it's an overtime, your regular day, whatever the hell it may be, you get your gear by the rig and you go find your relief. Okay, cool. Get that all figured out, see what's going on, hear what the buzz is going on the app floor. When people are throwing their gear down, you're thinking about all these things. What do you have for training today? What is it? What's the weather like? Blah, blah, depending on time of year. Instead of doing the opposite, which is coming in street clothes, unshaven, your gear's in its locker or it's still in your car because you're coming from an overtime somewhere else or whatever it may be, and you go and sit down at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, and you're not ready in any aspect. You're not in your PT gear or uniform of the day when you start, depending on how your department operates. You're not shaven. Your gear's not by the rig. So as soon as a call comes in, you're way behind. Now, have I done that before? Hell yeah, I have. I've done it, and I've gotten caught with my pants down like an idiot. But live and learn. You know, it's like that's what happens. Listen, I love coffee like anybody else too. But I know at least I got to do one or two things. Go in, drop my gear off by the rig, or go in and tell somebody, hey, I'm here. And that's kind of like a little signal too, depending on where you work. You pull your gear out and you just drop it by the rig that you're supposed to be assigned to that day. So if the other captain that relieving you sees your stuff there, they know you're in the building somewhere. That's cool. Go and get your PT gear on. You've already heard my thing about if you haven't listened to other episodes. If you're coming from home, my thing is already be shaven before you come to work. Then you don't have to deal with that. Don't come in looking like you crawled out from underneath the freeway for 4 days that you are off because you got a big old beard and you've been camping or whatever the hell. Wake up 5 minutes earlier, 10 minutes earlier, shave your face before you come into work because you're good to go. One less thing off your plate. You get a run. You don't look like the freaking hobo that just jumped on the engine and now is talking to Joe Public, who may have never had the experience of being around the fire department. And the first thing they see is your unshaven ass looking there like, ooh. And then you expect them to vote for you guys to give you a raise or whatever the heck it may be or do something in the future. There's their one shot. That may be the one time that person calls 911 and all they remember is some unkept fireman came to the door and was like, yeah, can I help you? So do with that what you will, but I've seen it multiple times. So you check out your gear, check out your radio, do all that's okay. There's the long checkout, right? But just that first couple minutes, getting in, coming in, put your PT gear on or whatever it is, uniform, you're already shaven, your relief knows you're there, and your gear is by the rig. Now I get it. The other person's got to get theirs out and then you got to put yours on. You go do the office paperwork in the morning. Cool. It works out. You get what I'm saying? I'm not going to be able to speak specifically to how your department does it because I only know this way. But that's probably pretty common. I don't think we all do that much different. And then I start checking out. Once I get all that handled, now my gear's going on, I check out the radios, make sure everything's set up, then start walking around the rig and just kind of open compartments. Look at what it does to your engineer and your firefighter when you start opening compartments and they're looking at you like, well, what's wrong? You're like, nothing. I'm just making sure everything's where it's supposed to be. I still am part of this company. It's not, don't get in the habit of just throwing your crap on and be like, they'll check it out. You got to know where things are too, because things are going to happen when you might need to run back to the rig and get something. Or you know where something is that somebody who was working overtime isn't aware of about your specific rig. So it helps. And watch how tight the engineer, the chauffeur, or the driver that you get when you come on their side and open things out, they get a little sketched out like, oh, everything good? You're like, yeah, I'm just looking at how things are set up over here and see what we have, what we might be missing. Oh, okay. Puts them at ease a little bit. So good habits, just kind of starting off your day. And so I think there was one, I can't remember what episode it was, but I know I've talked about that in the past, so I don't want to get too nutty about it. But let's talk about the learning curve. Yeah, you have your formal training. Maybe you don't, I don't know, volunteer versus paid versus however it may be. Somehow there's training involved. They don't just usually, here you go, kid, jump on the rig. I don't hear that happening as much anymore. Yeah, you might have limited 2-week academy or something light, or you could have some full-on thing. Who knows what it might be, but there's going to be a learning curve, and you learn by experience, OJT. Yeah, you get the basics down in the tower and the academy, and they show you how to do this, do that in a perfect scenario. That's cool. Those are the basics. That's fine, but everything else is going to be OJT on the job. And your pace is determined by where you work. There's not much you can do about that. It depends on what department you got hired with, where they place you, big or small. Yeah, that's just the way it is. But fires are going to happen. I haven't worked in a district yet. Slow, a call a day, 2 calls a day that hasn't had a fire and they're first in at some point. Might not happen very often, but there's a reason you're there. Right? It isn't just because there's cities and counties have extra money. They just throw things, oh, let's put a fire station here. Let's do this. No, there's a reason you're there. Insurance, population, risk, whatever it may be, there's a reason you're where you're at. Now, it may not be as frequent that you get those fires or emergencies or whatever it may be, but it's going to happen. You just hope to be working that day. But you're not going to be able to hit it all the time. It's just the way it is. Somehow it always seemed like every time I bid somewhere and went somewhere new, the first 6 months we had every fire that we could get. I don't know if it's because it's like new and you're just like, oh, excited, and it just seems to happen, or, well, who the heck knows? It's just some weird thing that happens. And then all of a sudden it tapers off and goes to kind of normal. I'm going to say it's just in my head, because why the hell would that actually happen? Because we don't all transfer at the same time. But like I said, you only learn from a specific amount of calls that you go on OJT, and you learn something on every call. So if you have the ability, if you're placed somewhere on probation or promoted into place, you don't really have much movement. But if you can, within your department, even if it's small or big, can you get to this station on the west side or east side that's a little bit busier, that does a little bit different work than this one? Or can you get to a whole nother area like a large agency and just bounce around and learn different environments of different firefighting? Because I worked in both. I worked in a small department, 3 station, and I work now LA County, huge, right? Almost 180 stations. Big difference. There's the happy medium, there's volunteer versus paid, there's half paid, half volunteer. There's all kinds of styles of departments out there. But if you have a way to move yourself around and put yourself in those positions, and it might not be the most comfortable, or it may not be with people well, they're fine. You're going to learn them. You're going to learn who they are. So just throw yourself out there. I don't know this side of town, and I don't know this group of people. Cool. Now you're on a level playing field. You just have to spend time there and just kind of learn what it's going to be. So if you have the ability, move yourself around to those specific areas. And if you don't, hey, don't worry. Train. Go on as many calls as you can, obviously, by being at work, working overtime if it's an option, working on other shifts. If there's a specific person you'd like to work with, that's that freaking animal that's always out there training or doing something in the station, has that better attitude, isn't always just Debbie Downer and talking crap at the table, and it's a cancer, and you're like, oh, I just want to work around that person this day, and you do trades with people or however it may be. You know what I'm talking about. Now, the best stress you can be put under is actual fires, right? So if we're just talking about fire, like we're talking about, let's talk about fire. Yeah. If the best stress you can be put under is going on actual incidents. And so nothing can replace that. Nothing can replace that pressure, that specific task that you're given, that dynamic. It's not the grinder or the tower where you know exactly where to pull the hose, exactly how to hook the hydrant, exactly how to do this because it goes right every time. I'm talking the extreme opposite, right? A place you've never seen. You have no idea where the hydrant is, how to stretch line to there, dark, can't see, pit bull jumping in the backyard, whatever the hell it may be. It's completely different than how we're trained because it's on the job. Nothing can replace that. That's why we screw up so much, because there's so many factors working against you that you can't control them, and you just work through it the best you can at an extremely fast pace, right? Because it's a fire. It's not like we're dragging ass going, hold on, let me work this out, because something that drives me insane is when we hear people say, it's no big deals, man. We'll figure it out when we get there. I'm like, you're an idiot. We'll figure it out. Yeah, we always figure it out when we get there. But if you don't have some kind of pre-plan and you haven't thought about it or talked to your crew, like, hey, if we get a fire, I like to do this initial SOP, SOG basic, and then we get what we get by what the incident gives us type mentality. Cool. But if you're not even talking to your crew at all, it's like, it's no big deal, man. Let's go play pickleball. And where are we going for lunch? You're a moron. You don't like it, turn it off, because you at least have to give your crew the basics. Now, do you have to do it every day? Hell no, not if it's your basic crew and you work the same crew every day. But there's always something you can learn from each other. Hey, the other day I worked here, and you learn from somebody else's experience who got on a fire at a place that you're like, damn, you got on that. What happened? Tell us. That's why we have lineup 2. It's not to talk about all the crap that you did on your days off. That's awesome. A boot goes on a fire in an area. I've never had a fire. Please tell us. Share the story. That's what I want to know. That's what we should be asking. Not like, whatever, dude. It's your first fire. Where's your ice cream and all that? It's like, okay, cool. There's a time and place for that. But for the craftsmanship part of the job, tell us what happened. Well, I did this, and then this happened, and then this. Cool. Okay. Well, first off, they're going to expose themselves and tell you like where they need help, so you can figure out a way to build them up better. And then they could tell you something like, yeah, there's a gate back here, and then there's a basement, or there's a gate here, and there's a pool in the back of that place, or inside this warehouse was this. You're like, holy crap, really? Jeez. Because we can't see everything. We can't pre-plan everything. So lean on everybody's experience. It doesn't matter their rank. You know, I think you understand what I'm saying. But the best pressure you can have is actually going on fires. No matter where you're assigned, a small department, a large, volunteer or paid, you have to go on real incidents to be better. And yeah, okay, here, the one thing I'm going to say that's going to piss people off. Going to real fires on real incidents is way better training than you'll ever get in a burn container or now this new VR crap. I saw this on Instagram. They're showing people with VR headsets and a backpack and a hose or some shit that responds. Give me a break. Go outside and do that. That doesn't teach you squat. That is so lame. That is just somebody trying to capitalize technology on the fire service. And yeah, I'll get haters and say, oh, no, it's great because of this. Okay, tell me the one thing that's good about, and then I'll listen to you. But when you're from the outside looking at that going, no, because this job will kill you. And if you get some kind of false sense like, oh, this isn't like the VR thing I did, please, if somebody has that and has tried it and somehow it's bitching, send me a message and do whatever and enlighten me. But just being the cynical turd I can be sometime, I'm like, that looks dumb. And yeah, am I talking smack on the burn containers? Yeah, I mean, I get what they do. There's a purpose for them. Phase 1, phase 2, you're teaching people that have never been in a fire environment. Sure. That's cool. You got to teach them that and the chemistry and all this. But after a while, if that's your only experience is burn boxes and you haven't gone on actual fires, slow down on trying to tell people how it actually is. Now, you can be great at doing the burn box because there's a whole technique to that and a cadre and everything. There's a reason because that can hurt you big time. And that's cool. But the only way you can get true experience into your belt is actually going on these incidents. And all that stuff you learn in those containers and those recruits and training afterwards that they learn, yeah, they can probably apply it they do apply it because it's something they've seen how fire reacts in a box. But settle down on some of the other things with that stuff where people are like, yeah, this is the way it's going to work. No, nope. You have to go on real fires and see how it is. And that's going to be your best opportunity. Not much else you can say against that. So do your best to get on as many as you can, put yourself in those positions and go on fires. I'm not talking wildland. I'm just talking structure, right? Wildland, and some people are like, I don't even know what the hell you're talking about with wildland. That's just a huge component of our department in Southern California. All of California, all over state. There's tons of states that deal with that. But I'm not necessarily talking about that. That's for another day. But learning curve, right? There's a learning curve. It's either super steep, a slow grade, a way to get yourself, move yourself around. I've already said it. You understand what I'm saying? Move yourself around if you have the opportunity. Try to get in on as many incidents as possible. And guess what's going to come with that? If you're in an agency that works EMS, guess what? Most of the places I've worked at where they get a lot of fire, they go on a crap ton of EMS calls too. It's just the nature of the environment that they're in. If there was a place that was like fires only, hell, everybody'd be there. Like we joke about it all the time, right? Like, hey, let's go out of service, fires only on the MDC. That'd be bitching. As much as I like EMS, I don't hate it. I did the medic thing for almost 15 years. But, all right, I've seen abdominal pains. I've gone to this urgent care that we pick up people every day because they don't know what the hell to do, so they call 911. Okay, but you know what I'm saying. The ratio, there isn't a place that's just ratio of like more fires in EMS, unless your department's set up that way. Which, God, I listen to some of these podcasts and I hear these guys back east or wherever it may be, however they're set up, and they're like, yeah, we don't go on EMS calls. I'm like, damn, that would be cool. And they're going on a shit ton of fires. So they're probably, they're shaking their head at us because on this side, we go on a crap ton of EMS and fires just happen to pepper in there. So it just depends on the setup of your department. And then you look at it, and why do we listen to those people? Why do we listen to those people who go work for departments that get a crap ton of fires? Oh, yeah, because they've been there. Like you can look at somebody and go, oh, that guy works for New York or Chicago. Or I was listening to a podcast recently about Camden, New Jersey. You're like, I don't know much about them, but sounds like they sure get a lot of fire. The East Coast side, right? We still get a lot of fires all over. Fires burn everywhere. They're everywhere. And unless you're watching local news or things like that, it happens all the time. It just depends on the type that you're going on and the frequency. It just depends on where you work. So, I don't know. I'm going to talk about a little bit more about testing and my experience with testing and fire departments and things like that in the next episode on that probation one. But right now, I'm just trying to talk about the learning curve, good habits, always trying to put a positive step forward when you're explaining something to somebody, and trying not to be the cancer. And what was it with those old timers that you're like, dude, you didn't screw around with so-and-so. And it's almost like a badge of honor because you worked a shift with them. You're like, oh yeah, I remember this one day I worked with so-and-so. Enter the name of the person that you're thinking of in your head right now. And it's like you get street cred just because you worked around that person. And you're like, damn, it was almost like a badge of honor to say, oh, yeah, I worked with so-and-so before he retired for like 6 months. Yep, there's a reason, because you liked it. But what was it that person had? What was it that made them that old timer that you're like, dude, you didn't screw around with so-and-so? You're slowly building up your reputation like that as you taper off to the end. Because it's hard to do, right? When you only have 4 or 5 years on, people just think you're a jerk. Because you're like, this guy, he's a jerk. He just likes to yell at people and big dog everybody. But when you have ability to back it up based on experience and time on the job and your ability to then wanting to mentor people or not, depending on how they come off, we're all going to get there one day. Not everybody acts like that because some people are just here to just kind of cruise through and get out when they can. Cool. And there's other people, nerds like myself, that ramp it up and just want to give everything they can back because all of a sudden you realize like the clock's ticking and we're going to be out of here. And then it's you're on to the next thing in life. All right, so let's see here. Talked about learning curve. Oh yeah, SOP, SOG stuff. I've already had this in the expectation episode, so if you really want any details on it, go back to that one, and it'll give you more of an explanation of what I'm talking about. But as a review, SOP, SOGs that line up, review with your crew often. If it's your regular crew that day, great. They should already know, right? And you should know what they're thinking. As an example, I have a ladder truck or a truck company at my station, so when we're talking about hand signals on the roof, on what the engineers are stating that they want for the ventilation hole, it's good every once in a while, especially when we have somebody who's working overtime or on a different shift or from an out station. These are the hand signals, and it's cool. It's like a review for me, like, oh yeah, that's right. These are the hand signals that we give each other for what the engineer is thinking of for the cut. That's great. That's a cool little thing to review. But as a quick synopsis of what I'm talking about, when I have lineup at a station, say I'm working overtime at a station with a crew I've never worked at before, then I give my little SOP, SOG standard of what I want to do on a structure fire, apartment house fire, brush, if it's within reason and time of year, TC traps, kind of real quick, what I want them to bring and what we're going to do as far as that. So as a quick example, one thing, apartment fire, nothing showing, and we're first in and we need to go search and find it. I always tell the firefighter, I want you to bring the high-rise pack, which is just 100 feet of 1 3/4 hose with a certain high-rise nozzle, gated Y, reducer, and a spanner. That's just how we build things. So just a high-rise pack, however that works for your department. So some hose and the water can. And I have in my BA compartment, I have a Halligan. So I bring that. With those, just the two of us and those 3 pieces of equipment, at least we're going and finding something. Okay, here, and we can build back the hose. We can force the door with a Halligan. And I'm talking about apartment buildings. So I know people are going, oh, see, you need to bring an axe, a Halligan, a this, a rabbit tool, all this crap. You know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about standards construction, apartment building, Halligan, high-rise pack, and a water can with just the two of us while we investigate can get us down the road a little bit. Those are the tiny little things I bring up. And then house fires and things like that. And I'll talk about a little bit more when I'm talking about when it comes to discipline in the next piece here. But those are the things that you need to think about and review with your crew, because the last thing you want to do is have somebody at that, oh, I thought you meant this, or I was thinking this, but you were thinking that. By going over and having SOP, SOG conversation, then you kind of minimize the not being on the same page. So for more details about that, I'd say go back to the expectations episode and I go in a little more in depth about that. But in between the calls, so you give that lineup thing as a normal day without getting interrupted, your lineup, your expectation, your SOP kind of operation stuff. Cool. All right. Work out, whatever you're going to do next. In between going on those fires, which is going to tie into the learning curve to the OJT, how do we get ready? We have to train, right? And it depends on how you train. Train as realistic as you can. Now, am I talking about going and what's the best, right? People are always like, oh, we have this apartment building or this commercial. We're going to put fire in and we're going to train. Oh, cool. That's great. That's pretty big, right? That's pretty logistically in depth with how setting that up. And there's a lot that goes on with that. But if it was just coming out of a medical aid and you're like, hey, look at this door. This is funky. Let's have a 5-minute conversation. That's training. Builds that little speck of information in your personnel's head and yours. All the way up to training with a full comp plan, your gear, pulling hose, climbing in and out of buildings, forced entry, depending on how elaborate you can be, whether you have a training tower or a live building that's getting ready to be torn down and your city or county or whatever allows you to work on that building, that's cool. Whatever it can be. Hell, on a rainy day, right? It's supposed to rain here in California tomorrow. So there isn't times where you go, oh, guess what? Yay, free day, rainy schedule. No, we just maybe won't go pull a hose in the rain. Or maybe we do just because, hell, fires happen in the rain. But if you don't want to beat up your crew and be soaking wet and everything else, and there's a lot going on, cool. There's a ton of videos. It was cool to see one of our probationary firefighters the other day bring up forcible entry. And we literally pulled up TikTok videos, YouTube videos, and it sparked so much conversation. It was awesome. Now can you learn from that? You can learn from it cognitively. I don't know if I'm saying it right. Instead of manipulative, sure. We cognitively build some skills, and it's raining and blah. Then when it's cleared up, we go to the tower or we go on one of the Firehouse Innovations, blue door props or whatever you may have, and we go and work on doors physically. Cool. So little steps, step, all the time, constantly of training. That's awesome. So there's always something you can do, right? If you're going to go full on gear or you're sitting with a cup of coffee on a rainy day watching videos for an hour and you're sparking that conversation, so much better than, I'm not saying watching a football game because that's cool. That's camaraderie. That's part of it too. That's a whole nother piece, but so much better than just letting people sit on their iPhones or sitting on their phones and looking at other crap. When you just spark that going, hey, can we do this drill? Awesome. It's great. And it's awesome when it comes from all different ranks and it's not just you trying to force them to do things. When you've gotten your crew so used to, not that I've done this, but I'm just saying when your crew is used to, the norm is training, and that's just part of it, you're doing awesome. That's great. Because that's the culture that's been built, is the reputation of that station, maybe that you were walked into or handed, or maybe you had a part in forming and manipulating and making that the norm. That's awesome. That's great. And now you make that the norm. And now your reputation of being that old timer that it's like, damn, you just don't have the reputation like that old crusty old timer dick. No. You're the crusty person and the salty person based on experience, time. You're mentoring other people. you're still into it 20 years, 15 years, 30 years into the job, and you're like, we're going to sit down and talk about this training, and we're going to do this. That's awesome. And yeah, go ahead, call me a nerd. But so are you for listening to this, right? So just kidding. You know what I'm saying? It's awesome. So there's definitely times where I'm like, screw this, I'm over this job, right? And you just get frustrated because you got mandatoried for the third time in a row. And hell yeah, I'm not even going to say that I wouldn't have times where I was just talking smack, usually to people that are my mentors that hopefully wasn't in front of my crew, but it happens, right? We all have weak moments. So, all right, enough about that. Cool, because you know what you're going to discover when you start doing a lot more training? You're going to discover weaknesses. I mean, I'm talking real life training, right? When we do training in the tower, the person has weaknesses that can't get enough points or doesn't do it right, they get fired or they get let go or whatever the hell it is. And then we get them out in the field because they did enough just to get through, but we just kind of go, yeah, you learned that in the tower, right? You're good. Okay, case in point. If you don't train enough or get the experience enough to put the skills that you did in the tower into real life, here's what you get. Now, out of muscle memory, we had a structure. I wasn't there, third-party story, but this is what was told to me by multiple people. And it's just a muscle memory thing, right? So you train all these firefighters in academy about using the blue forceful entry door or yellow or red or whatever it is company that you use. And you tell them, okay, we're going to shock, gap, set, force, all that whole, whatever thing that you use. Well, right, they don't shock the door on that because, one, it's going to do damage to it and hurt themselves and everything. Anyways, it translated to a real-life incident where the person went to go check the door and shock it. And this is why I don't talk about these things, because some people will be like, you don't need to shock the door. I get it. But my point is, the person did the same muscle memory thing that you would do to that door that they did in real life, because they're so used to doing it that way that they haven't had the OJT to realize either shock it and actually hit it, or don't and just put pressure and use the Halligan. Whatever way, let's everybody come off their high horse for a second about how to do things. You understand what I'm saying? That's where you get the actual training, is by physically going out and showing them real life. And then the ultimate is actually going on incidents and using that skill. That's the pinnacle, right? Taking all that training, actually using it on an incident. Because you can train, and somehow we always hold up on certain things because we can't damage this door or do this, or we can't pull hose or flow water in a building because it's going to do damage. The pinnacle is actually going on incidents and putting that thing into service, those drills and that training. So, take it with a grain of salt, and don't underestimate and think that just because the person's a good firefighter or a new engineer or a new captain, because they're a good person, that doesn't mean they're a good blank whatever they are, because that doesn't translate. So just because they're a nice person, or the boot cooks a good meal, or this person does great because they clean the rig all the time, that doesn't mean they know how to pump the thing. That doesn't mean they know what the hell they're doing. That just means they're that. So that's the other little thing I always make fun of or say. Oh, that person's a great person. He's a nice guy. She's a nice person. Yeah, except the other ... doesn't mean you want to work with them. Right? So, yeah, they're a great person. There's a lot of good people in the fire service. There's a lot of good people. But think about if you were to put together your ultimate crew, taking out the who's the best cook and who's all this, and maybe you can factor that in. Think about your ultimate best crew that you could ever put together. What would that look like? What could you accomplish? So, anyways, getting a little sideways here, but okay. All right. Fireground discipline. What is it? Ooh, afternoon coffee. Okay. I think I know I've touched on this because I'm a spaz and will slightly get out of range of what I'm talking about from other episodes. But what is it about fireground discipline? So we're talking about fire. You got a legit fire. House fire. Let's keep it simple. House fire, where most of the things are room and contents, couple rooms going, standard single-family dwelling. That's a normal fire, right, that we go on. You don't have to have anything specific, commercial buildings, high-rise, apartments, to have a single-family dwelling house fire. That's probably our bread and butter, if I had to just say. That's what we're here for, right? So that's what a lot of places go on. That's the most common universal thing that to cover the whole fire service are those things. Well, fine. How many have you been on? You've been on none, one, or a bunch. How did they go? Right? So People always say, oh, however the first line goes, so goes the fire. Yeah, probably. Yes, that is true. But also the discipline that is given to that person on the nozzle. The assistance to pull that hose up when the coupling gets hung up on a planter box or at the front gate, hung up on a piece of drywall or the molding going around the corner of the baseboard. That discipline also factors into how well the first line goes. How well the other captains hold up and have discipline to sit on the hydrant, to listen and say, what do you need? And take the assignment and not try to shuck it or give the whole, like, we're 30 seconds out. You got an assignment when you're not even freaking close. That right there deserves a kick in the ass for people that do that. Because you're no good to that person when you're 2 minutes out legitimately and you're saying you're 30 seconds and then you T-bone or hit something or get caught up and get stuck behind a train or whatever the hell it may be. Tell them when you're coming on scene. Now, do you have to pull the maxi and sit there and go, we're on scene. What do you need? No, you know what I'm saying. You're coming around the corner and now you're 5-10 seconds out. And they're already yakking, trying to get stuff out on the radio, and you're trying to step in between them handing out tasks. That's a dick move. You need to have discipline to wait. I don't care if your crew's jumping around in the back seat waiting to get it. So what? It's not your day to put out that garage fire or that bedroom fire. You're not going to be doing dick anyway. There's already probably a line in there. So you're going to be supporting everything that goes to make that fire go out. It's a coordinated effort. To act like a bunch of wild, crazy people because we just want to get in there and get some and be undisciplined, not cool. And you're going to have other places where some places are very, very good about having a standard procedure and doing things with water supply. Like we still struggle with the fact of bringing in water. Some places it's just how it is. And if you don't do it, you're going to get heat. And other places you're like, what are you talking about? We're bringing water. We don't tank everything, right? I'm not even going to get into that. We're talking about that could be a whole nother conversation about fire, tanking it versus laying in. Who does it when, and blah, blah, blah. Everybody's opinion. We'd never fix anything. But there's certain things that need to happen as far as discipline. Discipline on getting assignments, sticking to the assignment, doing the right thing. I think I've had this conversation. Who loves getting RIC assignment? Rapid Intervention Crew or RIT or whatever you may call it. Who loves getting that? Nobody. But if you're assigned with that, do the best you can with that. Get all the stuff set up. Get everything ready to go. Check in with the IC and see what's going on. Take a hot lap around the building and see what's going on. That's huge because when it goes down, you having your SA up on that is huge, right? I would like to know that somebody on the outside is doing that. And when I'm on that, getting that assignment with my crew, we're going to do the same thing. Okay, so you understand what I'm saying there. The discipline to wait for that assignment, to bring water, to sit on a hydrant, to not say, oh, I'm 2 minutes out or 30 seconds out when you're actually 2 minutes out, 3 minutes, maybe, just because you want a better assignment. Dude, I've physically seen somebody do that when they say, oh, we're 2 minutes out and we're sitting on scene because my captain was disciplined, waiting for the chatter to drop out so he can ask for an assignment. And then the person steps over and says, we're 30 seconds out when they weren't even close. They get handed fire attack or backup fire, whatever the heck it was. They're not even close to being on scene. So don't do that. Our captain at the time then was disciplined enough to walk over and go, yeah, we're here. Oh, okay. The assignment got reassigned. Waste of time. Wasted the IC's time. Don't do that. It sucks, right? You're like, damn it. Nobody wants to get beat. Nobody wants to get the crappy assignments, but integral connections of putting it all together is what make that incident happen and go away. So be disciplined. Finding the FDC connections, standpipe, sprinkler connections. You got to know. You got to know what you're doing, basically, right? You got to know, where am I going to fit in here? And it takes time. Once again, everything will always come back to the OJT. It just takes time. I've screwed up plenty. I've been the guy who says that because I think that's what's the right thing to do, or I want to get my crew in there, and then it gets screwed up, and now I'm the jerk. I've had the other people where I say, wait a second, let me look for something. They come in, and I, come on, man. And that's where your captain's meetings with your chiefs and everything, closed door. Like, you don't go and punk another captain in front of his crew or anything, or her crew. You have that side conversation to clean that up, or I like to handle things right then To say like, oh, we'll handle that at a captain's meeting, it's not going to happen. Those things get canceled all the time, or that person's not there. When you have the meeting, just handle it right then in a nice diplomatic way as best as possible. You can assume that sometimes I can get hangry and it doesn't come out great, just like all of us. So just clean those things up, because I don't know about you, but I'm sick and tired of hearing fire went out, nobody got hurt at your AARs, if you even have one. After action review of the fire, I'm always tired of hearing that. Oh, fire went out, nobody got hurt. Yes, that is important. And yes, that happens most of the time. But there always are some learning points, and then there's definitely positive points that we can say, thank you, so-and-so, for waiting. Thank you. I saw you pull this line up, stretch that extra 10 feet, allowed us to hook around the corner and get down the hallway. Awesome. Those are the kind of things that need to get brought up. So that's good. So all good things too, but there's also a time and place to straighten things out that need to be. Okay, so experience of your crew. And you have to look at your crew for that day and who's in what key point positions and possibilities that they're going to be in. And that's going to help make your decisions on how far you're going to let somebody go into an incident or a fire but without you, or how far they can get away from you. Basically, how long of a leash can you give them? That's going to be a huge factor. And where I'll bring that up is this last question, or when it comes down to the question of the question from the streets, then I'll bring that up and tie it back around more of how much leash you can give your crew. But being aggressive on the Fireground. You've heard that all the time, like, be aggressive. And you're going to hear that either, controversy on whether you run on the Fireground or not. I'm not even going to go there. But there's a fine balance between being aggressive and getting the job done safely and being completely out of control, like a wild person. So, yeah, I think you got to get where I'm at. Being aggressive, hell yeah. I'm totally about being aggressive, getting the good assignments, getting in and being disciplined, kicking ass and doing the best you can within reason, and pushing hard and working hard and doing all those things. That's huge. I love that. But there's a balance between being a wild, crazy person and acting a fool and being the aggressive person. You've seen it. I don't know that I have to explain it too much, but it is very difficult to hold back your workers as a company officer then when you're trying to let them be aggressive but not out of control. And you have to walk that fine line of protecting them from themselves sometimes at the detriment of them thinking that you don't know what the hell you're doing, and then explaining it later. And then, like I said, there's going to be times where years down the road, it might click with them and go, oh, now I get it. Now I understand why they held me back. I'm in this position. I'm in their position now as a company officer. That's why they did that. That's why, whatever, insert whatever story you want. But staying in control and being aggressive to get the incident handled is the zone we want to work in. Don't be out of control and dangerous and make straight up just dumb decisions. Try not to, right? You've all seen it. You've seen it happen. You're like, Jesus, lucky again. Because when you're that person and your crew is that group that people know as aggressive but disciplined and hardworking, those are the people that in the morning when they look at the personnel report or the PAR report or whatever the heck you want to look at for the battalion, that you look at and go, so-and-so's working and this, and these people are working around you. Let's get a fire today. Granted, we don't want people's property to get damaged, but if it was going to happen today, let's do it today because we got some A players in all ranks playing today to get that fire, that incident, just to see how well you can do as a unit and work together. And you know that, right? Because you've seen other days where you're like, holy Christ, I hope we don't get a fire today. Because you got maybe the substandarders or the barely crossing the line people there are like, jeez, dude, I hope we don't get anything today. I know you've heard it. I know it. I know it happens. It doesn't matter what size department or who you work for or any of that matter, because it's all the same. All right. What other good habits here? Let's see. Oh, occupant support. Yes. Finally. God, I was hoping he was going to talk about occupant support. Right. What do I mean? Whatever you call it. I don't know. Whatever you might call it in your agency. But we call it occupant support. Basically, we go and people have a fire in their house. We knock it down. We do our salvage overhaul. Do all that stuff. I'm going to talk about that in a second. You do the other cool thing, take pictures in people's burnt out house or room, like everybody's all smiling with their hands, thumbs up, which, that looks like crap, right? But I get it if you can do it inconspicuously and the resident doesn't see you celebrating that their house burnt. Cool. Feel the sarcasm. But you know what I'm saying? I get it. It is good to have those records and those memories. Just try to be tactful about it when you're talking about those things. So what I'm talking about is the occupant support after. What do we do with these people? So, I don't know if you people have, you people, what are you talking about? Jeez, it's getting late. It's already an hour and 5 minutes and we're still going. Have you seen the people that sit on the corners and just wait for us to leave because they're the board up companies or whatever that are just like vultures getting ready to jump on these people? And yeah, I say that like a dick way, but you know what I'm saying? Like those people need a little guidance and protection of saying, okay, what are my next steps here? What happens? So we like to explain to that person, usually it's the first in captain whose district it is. We have a pamphlet or a packet that we hand out. And I know I've talked about this in another episode. It's a little packet of showing people like what happens next. Call your insurance, look for this, get this. We try to help them, find their phone, medication, car keys. We go as far as having a thing called a save card. I think that's California, a state thing. Maybe it's a national thing, but basically it's a gift card, a couple $100 that allows them to stay at a hotel or do whatever. Clothing, food, they can use it for whatever. Most likely if you have insurance, it's going to get reimbursed, but those first day, 2 days, week, whatever, while the insurance is trying to figure it out, can be a little hectic and chaotic and you don't know what the hell is going to happen. So we really try to take it to the next level and have occupant support. Yeah, handing somebody a piece of paper that says, here you go, enjoy this, doesn't necessarily do things. So I know that you guys go above and beyond and do certain things that you'll never get credit for, that you never hear about, that isn't put on social media. So that's already happening, but I think we've stepped up the level of occupant support with connecting people with the right things, getting them help as much as we can. That's what we're here for. I know you're doing it. But just remember, it doesn't always get talked about. It's not the sexy thing of the fire stuff, right? It's not like, you're not going to get mentored by somebody to go, here's how to handle occupant support. Let me talk about that. Ooh, I should do an episode on occupant support. Give me a break. You know how many people without download that? Wouldn't happen. So, but make it part of your thing as your experience that, yeah, you might only do it once or twice a year, 3 times, depending on how much you work, how much fire activity, the standard. Then you would know how do you deal with occupant support and what it's like to actually talk to people and go, here's what you need. What can we get you? What can we help you with? The humanity part of this job, not just going in and kicking doors and saving babies. So there's that huge part. And then how about after all this work, all this stuff that we put our efforts into, how about just taking care of ourselves? January, I didn't know this, but it's Firefighter Cancer Awareness Month support. So to me, yes, a month, great. It's a good awareness thing, but it needs to be part of our whole whole thing all year long. Clean turnouts, getting your crew cleaned up, making sure they're aware of it, exposure reports, whatever you may call them, going all the way through the whole incident, all the way through getting your gear clean, your crews taken care of, the exposure reports, like I said, for the future, educating new peeps that may not be aware of it about keeping their stuff clean. There's all that portion to that. Still your responsibility as a supervisor to be teaching and showing because I know you guys have the old timer. I talk about the old timers. What about the old timers that are firefighters or engineers below you that have way more time on than you do, and you never see them send their gear in to get cleaned? How fun of a conversation do you think that's going to be for you to say, hey, don't you think you should? So what? Do it anyway. Do you think they haven't heard it? They've heard it. But do you think that even though they're going to big dick you and try to be like, yeah, I don't do that. Yeah. Nope. I like my turnouts the way they are. Maybe at some point you get a breakthrough on them and you're like, you know what? Even if they're not going to do it, at least they know you care. At least you say something to them and go, hey, you should do this. Now, are you going to be saying, you're going to go like, I'm ordering you to do it? I don't know. You cross that bridge. But just the fact that you mention it to that person, you don't just blow it off like they're the 30-year-old guy and they should know better. 30-year guy, they should know better. that you just say, hey, we're going to bag up all our stuff. You want a bag here so we can send your gear in, or however you guys may do it to get it cleaned, or you have your own extraction machine or whatever it may be. Just the fact that they know that you care goes a long way. Okay. So you're still doing a lot of stuff for your crew all the way through for long-term things, keeping that stuff clean, making sure they're taken care of. So, whew, it's an hour and 10 minutes already. How much more do I got here? All right, so we're still going to talk about fire, but okay, let's actually talk about fires. Fires I've been on that I learned something from. And it's crazy because you look at exposure. Like exposure reports for our department is every time you go on a fire, you get a piece of paper that says you were exposed to whatever type fire for this long. It has an incident number, a date, your name, all that stuff. I've saved them all since I've been on the job. So since 2000 until now. And I don't have one for every fire I've been on. So my notebook is pretty decently thick, right? You don't realize in a year how many fires you go on, depending on where you work. And I've worked in slower stations. I've worked in busy ones. You can't control that. So the size of your notebook, yeah, let's get the measuring stick out. That don't mean squat, because not everybody records all that, and there might not be an official program with your department. That part's fine. I don't care about that. So wherever you can be as far as your experience on the job training, it's going to happen. I'm telling you, fires are going to happen. So a couple fires I had that I learned something from, right? We learn from every fire. But let's see. What am I going to talk about? Easy. Okay. So I remember we had a fire one time. I was in West Hollywood. I was a firefighter paramedic. Happened to be on the engine that day. Get an apartment fire call, which was normal because there's mostly apartment and high-rise condos there. Not a lot of single-family dwellings. But we still had them. And we get an apartment fire call, center hallway, first floor. Stretch the high-rise pack, hook up. Somebody stretches to the door. We just Y off and start dragging the hose down the hallway. One of the first fires, I want to say center hallway, that I had with this certain nozzle that we have. And, you're dragging the line down the hallway. I happened to be that guy. Happened to be the nozzle man that day. The one time I'm like, yes. Okay. And so everybody knows, check that nozzle, right? Check the nozzle before you open it. Anyways, long story short, dragging that hose down the hallway, find the fire doors just cracked open a little bit, push it open. Okay, it's kitchen fire. It's kind of rolling a little bit out. No big deal. We keep it in check. Idiot, like I am, didn't realize how much I was dragging the nozzle along the carpeted floor in the hallway. Set that thing and rolled it to the left, so it opened up in like a freaking Bellagio fountain everywhere, and just steamed the crap out of people. Luckily, we're still in the hallway, and we pulled the door back and checked it. And luckily, nobody was inside. No occupants. Then you realize, like, God dang it. Shoot the nozzle, push it all to the right. Now I got my pencil, push back, do whatever. It's just little things that you learn. Now, do you think that when the boots now, fast forward 10 years, every time the probationary people do high-rise drill or talk about that hose or that specific nozzle, what do you think I bring up to them every time? Remember, see how loose this nozzle is? It rotates a lot, doesn't have a lot of resistance. So when you're pulling it down the hallway, here's what you do. I always bring that up because I screwed the pooch and that happened to us. Granted, you think they don't know? Maybe not, but it's always good to tie a true story into something that you hope they remember when they get fortunate enough to be on the nozzle like that. And so that was one. How about this? How many of you guys have ever been lost in a fire? Like legit lost where you actually got scared? Think about it for a second. Have you had that yet? And maybe you've never brought it up to anybody, and that's fine. Keep it to yourself. It's no problem. But say you're just listening to this with your earbuds and things, and you're thinking about it right now. Think about it for a second, and there might be a time in the future where you are able to explain that story to somebody. Maybe it's not at work. Maybe it's over a beer. maybe it's on a vacation with other firefighter or something like that. But you bring that up and you bring it up and it actually scared you. I had that happen once. Once? Yeah, at least once that I can remember right now. Another one. I was in West Hollywood again. Maybe I shouldn't have spent 5 years there. West Hollywood area for us is piece of Hollywood, Sunset Strip, all that stuff, high rise. It's where you learn to do high rise and apartment fires. As far as the training aspect, it's not like the busiest for burning. There's a lot of areas in our county that you can learn a crap ton about apartment fires. But this was very specific because of high rise and they train a ton on it. So it was awesome. I loved it. Learned a bunch from so many people over those 5 years in all different ranks. I'd only been there 3 weeks. Afternoon, right after lunch, I think it was 1 or 2 in the afternoon. Our station sits higher, a little bit higher above than Santa Monica Boulevard. Very well-known area of LA. Stretches from Santa Monica at the ocean to deep into LA city proper. And the 2-mile stretch of it that passes through the city of West Hollywood is covered by our county fire agency. And afternoon, right after lunch, we get a commercial fire and we can see it from the station. We look out our kitchen, we're elevated up enough. We look down, huge header showing black smoke coming up in the air. Like, holy shit. I've only been here 3 weeks and boom, immediately get this commercial fire. Middle of the day. Ends up being 2-story commercial building that's a nightclub. Like, goes off. It's crazy. So we were there in about a minute and get all my gear on. I happened to be on the squad that day, so it's just myself and my partner, like a pickup truck, like LA County, like Squad 51, just like that, right? So we get assignment to go around the rear of the building to check, see what's going on. It's in an alleyway. All we hear is just people just screaming at us that somebody was still inside. It's just me and my partner. So like blood-curdling scream. Like this isn't a guesstimate that maybe somebody's in there. This was legit, somebody's in there. And we didn't even take the time to grab our breathing apparatus. We just ran over, grabbed our helmet, ran to the door, black billowing smoke coming out. We couldn't have made it up the stairs. It was already pressurized coming down the stairwell. I remember us just yelling for this guy, just giving him a voice or something to come towards, just yelling to see what was going to happen, trying to get his attention, whoever was up there. And all of a sudden, you just hear a person just come barreling down the stairs, like somersaulting down the stairs, boom, right in front of us at our feet. So fortunately, I don't know if it was just by the grace of God or whatever it was, by us just screaming. That person was probably close, but they ended up saving themselves, basically. Just by us yelling, that helped. But we were able to drag him out just that little bit. He saved himself, like I said, and then got our breathing apparatus on, passed him off to the ambulance. He was fine, just needed a little oxygen. And then I don't remember all the details, but I remember working our way in through a hose line to the front, helping out the engine firefighter. And I remember feeding the line in with them. Fire all around you, like the curtains were on fire. It's crazy. And I'm feeding the line, and I came off the line a little bit, but I looked down at the floor, like I'm laying down almost on the floor, and I can see the street. I can see sunlight. I can see the street. Looking out, I'm like, oh, I'm good here. We're good. Well, I stood up and then got bumped into by another firefighter and completely came off the hose line. Now I'm lost. I can't find them. They've made a turn around the corner. I'm lost, and you don't really start panicking much, but you're just kind of going, okay, hold on. I can hear them. I can't see. And by them putting water on it, it steams the shit out of everything, so now you can't see. So now my little visibility I had a foot off the ground is gone. Start making my way around, trying to feel around like they say, right? Just find a window or a door. Yeah, but you're in the middle of a nightclub that's huge. So somehow I make my way to a wall and get in. I go, okay, I'm where I'm supposed to be. Nope. I'm in a bathroom. Now I'm in the restroom. I can feel myself. I look and I'm running into toilets and urinals and trying to figure out where the hell I am. Still not panicking. Now that you realize RIC teams, right? So that you're supposed to be, or a Mayday situation, right? They say try to unscrew yourself for 30 seconds, and if not, hit the Mayday. We hadn't really trained too much on that yet. Although, and I think back, like, what would I do in this situation now? Because granted, 30 seconds is a long time. You're not sure what you're going to do. But So ended up finding my way out and finding the hose line and getting outside. And right, you feel like, oh, I just pissed myself a little because I got lost. But you don't want to leave your partner in there, so you make your way back to the hose line. You're good. You got to do a bottle change. This fire is just ripping. It ended up going to a third alarm, or actually a second, but a lot of resources the way we piece it together. And you get outside and you don't say shit to anybody because you're like, well, that was scary because I almost got myself lost. But the biggest thing was, my point is there's going to be times where that's going to happen. Well, explain that to people. I tell people now, I don't just say, hey, guess what? This one time I almost got myself killed because I did this. But it's a weight that I carry, or explain to people, like, you can get lost in this job. So when people are like, man, you're too serious or whatever, you're like, yeah, there's a reason, because things can happen. Now, is it fun to be serious all the time? No, it sucks. It's not part of this. But when you come to actual firefighting, which I'm talking about buildings, and we're talking about fire right now, so there's going to be those times where I tell people, yeah, I got lost. I did exactly what I wasn't supposed to do. I was being loose as far as like, oh, I'm good. I'll just feed this line. I wasn't staying close to the line. And by that time, I'd been a fireman like 7 or 8 years. So then you think you have it licked, right? Because, oh, I've done this before. Well, there's always a way for this job to humble you. And that one still, even when I talk about it a little bit, you still get nervous because it takes me back to it a bit. Like, God damn, I could have bought it right then. Getting lost. Yeah, it wasn't like I was trapped or, getting burned up or anything, but that could have gotten myself where I was already low on air as it was, and you're pushing yourself to the envelope as like running as much air as you can before you go out, which is stupid. Right now we've changed that. So it's those little things. You tell those stories to people, and you're like, hopefully one day you're not just trying to one up somebody else's story, because they always seem to happen where we just, oh yeah, this one time and then this one time, and you're trying to top somebody's story. I try not to do that, but I try to explain during a drill, like, hey, this is why this is important, so take this serious. And then, those things happen, but it is good to explain it every once in a while to people about where you screwed up. And if you look at both of those stories, what happened? I screwed up. Yeah, that's just what happens. But if I can tell somebody how it was and they learned from that experience during a drill, I'll tell them. I don't try to protect it and go, oh, no, I've always done everything great. We've all screwed up. We know it. And there's times where I tell people, like, here's why. Here's why you got to be careful. So why do I talk about those stories? Well, they're one of just a couple little things I've done, right? And everybody's got stories. And sometimes it's easier to relay a point or a teaching point or something when you tell a story. Not just showing somebody like, you should do it like this because you should. When you can relate it to a story and one that gets somebody's attention, then cool, then it helps. So, okay, there's nothing crazy about those stories, but it was just something that always sticks with me, that you want to teach other people, and that's what you just explain to them. This is the situation, this is what happened, and this is why. Sometimes the story sticks more so than just teaching somebody, instructing them. I did have one more story, but I actually want to keep it for next episode because it's a little more in depth. I want to explain it a little bit more. There's some audio I can pull off of YouTube from it. And let's just say it has to do with a couple days near the end of the year. Jeez, I can't remember what year it was now. 2011 maybe. We had a guy that started lighting fires over the next 4 days. And it was chaos for 4 days. This arsonist running around, and there was a couple good things out of it, but I want to save that story for the next episode because by the time I wrap this up, it's going to be about an hour and a half. So anyways, I'm going to save that one for the next one. So let's finish off with a question from the streets. I'm pretty sure I answered this before, but I want to bring it up because we're talking about fire stuff. So it was establishing command versus passing command to the next company officer and when to make those decisions of what to do. Well, you got to go by your department policy. There might be strict rules or a strict policy or guideline or whatever you may have that says how you will do things. So number one, do what your department policy is. I'll just give you that, right? But we always work in the gray, and there's always situations that dictate what we're going to do and decision making. And when you have all this input coming at you super fast on an incident and you're trying to make the best decision with the best intention on what you're given. So I can't say here's a hard and fast rule for it. But when we were talking about experience, one thing that was brought up in our decision making and has been taught recently under our training is one factor that you have to weigh in, and that is the experience level of your crew. There's times where when I worked in certain stations, all of us had some time on, and our captains felt that they could let us have a little bit longer of a leash, right? To go in and find out what we got, relay back to them what's going on. They make that decision whether they run the incident or pass command, and then it has to do with you getting passed to the other engine and your people are accounted for that get assigned to fire attack, however it may be. But experience level is huge. And the reason I bring that up is if you know and you look at your crew in the morning and you're like, say for us, we have 3-person engine companies, a captain, engineer, and a fireman. So basically it's me and the firefighter. I'm trying to do my 360, do my circle around what's going on. And you have these, and you give some direction to the firefighter to pull a hose line to the front door. Well, can you let them go in? Well, obviously you can't, right? They can't be in there by themselves. Now, do I let them have the leash to go, okay, get to the front door, get the line there, don't get deep into the structure, but at least pop the door, get forcible entry, control the door, check to see if there's an occupant or something right inside that area that you can make an immediate rescue? Yeah, for sure. That's what we're there for. A little bit of risk, right? But I'm not going to let them start stretching a hose line down the hallway by themselves. Would I even let a seasoned firefighter do that? That's dangerous too. But you can see where sometimes just based on, I can't say always shall because there's too many factors, right? They're not going to go in and put out a bedroom fire by themselves, although I bet you some of you guys have stories of doing that, which, yeah, it happens. But when you're just trying to think safety-wise and there's some gray area you're going to work in, it might happen. But my decision-making factor, and that's been guided by our SOPs, SOGs, are can you make an immediate stop of the incident where you go in and put the fire out, you pass command to the next company officer? Is there an immediate life hazard or rescue that needs to happen? Okay, pass command. But they always want us to say we're going to pass command to a company that's already arrived on scene. We can't just throw the football up in the air and give it to a certain company. You can see where that could get messed up. But there's just too many factors for me to say. But if you work inside your department policy and you weigh in on the factors of what's the experience level of your crew, how well involved is the structure? Is there an immediate rescue that you need to get rid of running command so that you can handle this immediate problem? Or can you knock this incident out because it's small, incipient into a bedroom fire working and you can knock it down and then pass command that way? Or is the thing so developed when you get there, 100 by 200 commercial building with fire through the roof? Okay, you probably should keep it and run it and set it all up. So there's so many variables. But the biggest one that I noticed recently was, what's the experience level of your crew? How much can you do? Do you need to be on their hip? But you can also pass them, right? You can pass your firefighter off depending on how your system's set up. We basically make a decision of if we're going to run the incident, our crew gets passed to that fire attack crew or whatever is going to be assigned. And I make sure that my person that's working for me knows who they're working for now. And then the other captain, I make sure, hey, you got your crew plus my person. So there's a lot of factors that you got to weigh in. And that's for another episode necessarily if we want to go really deep into that or a side conversation. But the biggest thing is what do you have to work with that day? How much can you factor in? But at the same time, they got to learn, right? So I don't always use that as a hard and fast rule. The thing I use with the experience level is how far I'll let them go where I'm not right on their hip with a supervisor or safety lookout or whatever it may be. More so for that reason. Not that I don't trust that they don't know what they're doing and you're only going to learn by OJT, because I can't talk about OJT and then be like, well, you can't let this person have much of a leash. Well, they're never going to learn. You just got to account for their safety, obviously. So follow your guidelines of your department policy and what has been set up in your structure of your department and how things work and what kind of resources you have come in. That's a big one too. If you're a small agency and you're waiting for outside agencies to get there or you're limited, then there's a whole nother working factor you got to work with there. So weigh it. Now, if it's, like I said, basically if it's well involved and I have other units arriving on scene as I'm pulling up, I'm probably going to run the incident. The biggest factor is I need my personnel to make sure they know who they're working for. So I don't just sit in the rig and try to tell them on the radio, because the first few minutes are hectic as all hell on the radio. I try to get out and physically tell them, you're working for so-and-so, point them in the right direction. I try to go face-to-face with the other company officer so they know to account for my personnel. So that's one thing there. So, there's a lot of gray area with that one. Just make sure your personnel are accounted for no matter what decision you're going to make. There has been times, though, where even if our large agency, I'm working at an outlying station that has 12 to 15 minutes before the next rig gets there. I'm more working on fire attack and trying to knock the incident down. There really isn't much to run. I don't have enough people there to even start setting up the ICS system. So if your dispatch is in your ear and you're listening and they're trying to talk to you while you're trying to coordinate a fire, you might have to say something as simple as, whatever your dispatch call sign is. I'm busy right now. I'm trying to put things to work here. I'll get back to you when I have further follow-up and the next group of resources start showing up. Otherwise, they don't need to ask you 1,000 questions. When you're in those more rural outlying stations, that happens for us too. Even though I work for a large department, we definitely have that. So there's a lot of stuff depending on what department size and how your department's laid out. Just like I said, go back to the safety of your personnel, their experience level, and how much of a leash you can let them have. And at the same time, you're always factoring in like, well, I need to let them learn, but you know what I'm saying here. You obviously can't let them get hurt. So as much as you can control that. So pretty much hour and a half. You might have already turned this thing off and not made it this far, but it's probably one of the longest episodes I've done. So like I said, I'm going to save that other story. The next episode, I'm going to start recording here. Hopefully I get to work tomorrow. So a couple days, get that thing knocked out. And I'm going to talk about probationary stuff, firefighters, engineers, captains, that kind of stuff. And then that's it. So like I said in the very beginning, thank you very much for all your support, for the word of mouth and passing this on. It's amazing to see the numbers grow every day. I just see the numbers, and then the last month or two, everything's kind of skyrocketed, and that's even without even episodes being posted. It's more of the interaction that we're having on Instagram and people following, getting the word out. And so this year, I'm really trying to ramp up how much I put into the podcast side of it. It's great to post pictures and everything. That's all cool, but the material, I think, the content, the interaction with others, that's the most important part. That's the motivating factor for me to do this. So as always, thank you. And if you have any questions, comments of any type, there's the website, www.thefireofficerproject.com. That takes you right there. You can send a message there. That way, if you don't have social media of any type, you can just go to the website and send a message, and then it lets me know. And then tell me what you think. Yes or no, you're way off base here. I like this, add this. It's too long, too short. You say so too much, whatever you think. I'm aware of that one too. It is a little funky to just be talking into a microphone. Anyways, follow us on Instagram at the Fire Officer Project. Twitter, I'm starting to throw stuff out on that and just trying to get the word out and pictures and videos and things of that nature. So Instagram, Facebook is also on Facebook, not so much. It's Instagram, the website, and then this podcast material. So thank you very much. I hope you got something out of this and it wasn't too much of a recap of other ones. And I look forward to putting out more content this year. I really appreciate all the interaction and the engagement. Make sure you're safe out there. And remember, always keep moving forward. This has been the Fire Officer Project.